My Roman Empire is my username, Third Culture Chinese. It was senior year. I went here and I was supposed to choose a capstone project. I had always been a big fan of webcomics, so I thought it would be a good time for me to create my own webcomics, and I was heavily inspired by Sarah Anderson's work. To make a webcomic series, of course, I had to tell my own stories, and I thought that the most interesting thing about me was my third culture upbringing. I was born in China. I was born in Shanghai. Growing up, I have lived in Shanghai, Japan, the US, and Singapore, and now I'm back in the US. So like a big part of my identity is being in different cultures, experiencing challenges, obstacles, as well as like some really fun stuff. As I started creating the webcomics on my Procreate on my iPad, I decided that I was going to publish all my comics on social media platforms, and I had to choose a username. Third culture was definitely going to be there. But third culture what? Because third culture kid, all those names were already taken. So I thought about third culture Winnie, because Winnie is my nickname, but I was like, About 2 years prior to that point, I had founded a student organization at my university, and I was working with a couple of different officers. And there was one day I was having an argument with one of the officers on how we wanted to market the club. So we were having back and forth text exchanges, and out of nowhere, she said something like, "Oh, by the way, you always make me feel like you hate China. Don't forget that wherever you go, you're always going to be Chinese." I was like, where the heck did that even come from? Like, we were not talking about anything related to that. That text hurt me a lot because prior to that, no one had ever questioned my cultural identity. I knew I had identity crisis within myself because I grew up as a third culture kid, but no one ever accused me of hating any particular culture. So I said, third culture what? Third culture Chinese it is. So I started making webcomics not only about my life, my experience growing up multicultural, I also slipped in a couple of Chinese lessons here and there, and later on, some of my webcomics eventually became bilingual. Then the pandemic hit, and everyone started talking about China, the virus, things along those lines. And because I was making content about my struggle, my experiences, and my joy as a Chinese person, I think the algorithm just like picked up my content and my platform really took off. Now, I no longer have that relevance, but at the time I did. And I was able to have a lot of clients who commissioned me for artwork, and I was able to make a living out of that. And now I have a stable career in addition to the artistic work that I do on the side. So the moral of the story is, if someone breaks your heart over text and says some out-of-pocket shit, own it, monetize it, and let the system do its work.